budget director and cooperation from the city with us concerning pay plan. And to take the time to be partners in this, I really appreciate them doing that for us. And to make it really short, I'm going to introduce Greg Patrick, who's the budget director. He's going to do a presentation on our future pay plan. We've got Joe Youngkin here also from the budget office. So I'm getting out of the way. You don't want to listen to me.
Good morning, everyone. How are we today? Good. So we have recruits over here?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Man, I like that. Budget analysts don't reply that way. So I'm really excited to be here today. I hope you guys are excited with the results. So over the last couple of years, Sheriff Barron and Mike O'Toole especially have been beating the heck out of us, telling us, look, our sheriff's deputies are underpaid compared to the market. So this summer we started a project to kind of look at the compensation of sheriff's deputies across the region, and we looked up into Richmond as well, to find out, is that in fact the case, and is there anything that we can do to help address that problem. So as the budget director, there's one caveat that I'll always give to everyone, and that is, in case you don't know, we don't have a whole heck of a lot of money, right? So anytime we adjust a pay plan, if we're adjusting it up, it costs quite a bit of money. So we had to do a couple of things. We had to figure out, we had to work through, what is a regionally competitive pay plan to make sure that you guys, when you come to work for the sheriff's office, that you're fairly compensated for the really difficult work that you do. And how do we implement such a plan in a way that is affordable for the city? Because while the state pays a portion of your salary, they don't pay all of it. The city supplements salaries to a great degree here. So any of the additional costs are being paid directly by the city as opposed to by the state. So without further ado, we'll jump into the presentation. So a couple things we're going to look at today. First, we're going to kind of take a look at where we are now in terms of our in terms of your pay plan. Then we'll take a look at one of the major concerns that the sheriff and Colonel O'Toole had, which is the number of separations, meaning the number of folks that are leaving the service of the sheriff's office. Finally, or next, we'll take a look at market comparisons. So a comparison of your pay plan to the other pay plans in the region. And then finally, what our recommendations are, what the pay plan recommendation was that the city manager included in his fiscal year 2019 proposed budget, which was just proposed about 2.5 weeks ago on April 3rd. All right, so first we'll take a look at a little bit of demographic data about you guys. So if we look over here, right now, or actually as of March 6th, there were a total of 369 sworn personnel in the sheriff's office. Of that 369, 240 roughly, or about 2/3, were deputies. We had about 50 master deputies, and then as you can see, as you move up the rank progression, that number gets a little smaller. Next slide. So here's your current pay plan. You've got 9 grades, and you've got 20 steps in each grade, and then you see your mins and maxes there. You have no recruit grade, which is kind of unique in the area. Next slide. All right, so let's take a look at separations. All right, so there's a lot going on in this chart, but over the course of the last 5 years, a total of 328 deputies, sheriff's deputies, sworn sheriff's deputies have left the service of the sheriff. Citywide, on average, over that period of time, we have what we call a attrition rate of 13%. Attrition rate means, if your attrition rate's 13%, that means over the course of a year, we'd anticipate 13 out of every 100 employees to leave. So total sheriff's office attrition rate during that period of time was 14.5%. So it's higher than the city as a whole. And if you just look at deputies, that number was even higher at about 17%. Next slide. Not only is your attrition rate higher, but the total number of separations over the last 5 years is continuing to grow. You don't need me up here to tell you that it's really important that we have experienced, qualified sheriff's deputies in the jail and doing your jobs to make sure they can keep, you keep each other safe and you keep the the prisoners safe. So this is not a good trend. Then we looked at why people were leaving. So overall, in the entire sheriff's office, 2/3 of all separations were people leaving voluntarily. That means they had a choice. They could either stay or leave, and they chose to leave. You know, a number were from retirement as well. Next slide. But if you look at just deputy sheriffs, that voluntary leave rate was 76%. So that means most deputy sheriffs were leaving, and they didn't have to. And that's not what we want to see. All right, so let's take a look at some of our market comparisons. This is your deputy sheriff. Now, a caveat here, what we're looking at here is the minimum pay for each of these grades, so the starting pay for each of these grades. So we compared you to, when it says comp board there, that means Portsmouth, essentially. Portsmouth only pays deputies the amount of money that the state gives Portsmouth. Then we looked at us, Newport News, Richmond, Suffolk, Virginia Beach, and Chesapeake. And if you look on this chart, other than Portsmouth, we start sheriff's deputies at the lowest rate in the region. Same holds true for sergeant, we're the second lowest. For lieutenant, we're the third lowest, pretty much tied with Richmond. And then for captain, again, we are the second lowest. So when you see attrition's high, lots of people are leaving, and we start people pretty much at the low end of the region, you know, it leads you to believe that, hey, you know, maybe there is an equity issue here. Maybe we're bringing good folks in, they're getting trained up, and then they have an opportunity to leave and go work doing the same job and making more money in the region. And that's not what we want, ideally. So then we looked at how other sheriff's departments pay their employees. We looked at best practices. And what we found is that step systems are now very uncommon. The only city in the region that has a step plan is Chesapeake, and that's only in the lower grades, grades 1 through 7. Hampton, Newport News, Portsmouth, Richmond, Suffolk, Virginia Beach all have salary ranges. And part of the reason they have salary ranges is because it allows a lot more flexibility in how you structure pay. Because employees don't have to be, deputies don't have to, their pay doesn't have to exist at a specific step. You know, it can exist anywhere along an open range. All right, so the proposed plan, this is I think what you guys are most interested in. Here's what's in the city manager's proposed budget. So we are going to switch to an open range pay plan, so no more steps. We're going to rename grade 1 recruit from work release crew supervisor. We are going to create a new master deputy grade that's going to exist between corporal and sergeant. And then in terms of how we're going to calculate pay, we're going to phase this in over 4 years. So we don't have the money to make all of this happen up front, but we are going to phase it in over 4 years. So it's essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the minimum of the new pay grade, which you're going to see in just a moment. We're going to allow a $500 credit for each year of service, which hopefully addresses some compression issues that we have. And then we're going to phase that in over the course of 4 years. So what does that mean? So, you know, with the end in mind, in fiscal year 2019, your average deputy sheriff is going to see a salary increase of 5%. The minimum would be 2 and the max would be 8.6. All of you are going to fall somewhere in there. And then, you know, on down the list. Average corporal, 4.5%. Average master deputy, 4.8%. Average sergeant, 4.8%. So on and so forth until you get down to lieutenant colonel. And we're on the low end over there because, Mike, we think you make enough money already. All right. So this is what the pay plan is going to look like going forward. And as I said, we're going to phase it in over 4 years. So if we just take a look at deputy sheriff, right now, the minimum is going to be $33,637. In FY19, that's going to go up to a little bit more than 35. In 20, that's going to go up to 36.7. In 21, up to 38.2. And then finally, we're going to settle in fiscal year 2022 at basically $40,000 for your starting pay rate. We're also going to bring in recruits at a recruit level. So recruit salaries in fiscal year 2022, when we're done with implementation, will actually be higher than what deputies are making right now. Next slide. So again, this is just a comparison to now. But to highlight here, Master Deputy, we're creating a new grade for Master Deputy. Currently, Master Deputies are in the same grade as Sheriff's Deputies. We're moving that grade for Master Deputy in between Corporal and Sergeant. So by the time we fully implement this pay plan, the new minimum for Master Deputy will be all the way up to $47,283. Next slide. All right, so we're going to walk you through some examples here of what this will mean. So to calculate your pay, when this is implemented in fiscal year 2019, you're going to start with the new minimum salary for each pay plan in each grade. So if you're a sheriff's deputy, that's going to be, ultimately $39,960. Then we're going to add $500 per year of tenure. So this is where it gets a little bit confusing. Because we're phasing this in over 4 years, if you have 5 years of tenure right now, at the end of 4 years, you'd have 9 years of tenure. So we used 9 times 500 in that instance, if you're a 5-year deputy, to calculate your tenure allowance. And then finally, you will take that new salary, you'll subtract your old salary, and whatever that increase is your 4-year increase. We'll divide that by 4. That's the increase that you'll see in fiscal year 2019. I'm sure that's clear as mud. Next slide. So here's an example. We have right now a deputy sheriff who is at step 1 with 1 year of tenure. The new minimum salary is $39,960. In 4 years, you'll have 5 years of service, so you've got $2,500 there in tenure allowance. So that means your current salary would be $33,637 in this instance. Your new salary is $42,460. That's a difference of $8,823. If you divide that by 4, you get your raise into fiscal year 2009 in fiscal year 2019. Next, we have a master deputy who is at step 9 with 5 years of tenure. So these are actual employees that we modeled these off of. So your new minimum salary would be $47,283. After you got 5 years now, you'll have 9 years of service in 4 years. So that'd give you $4,500. So your current salary in this instance would be $40,651. Your new salary in 4 years is $51,783. We spread that over 4 years. So you take the increase of $11,132 divided by 4. That's the increase you're going to get in fiscal year 2019. And here's another example. For a sergeant at step 9 with 20 years of tenure, new minimum salary is going to be $50,642. They'd get a $12,000 credit for their tenure. Their current salary at that point is actually greater than the calculated salary. So what this means for that person is each year going forward, they'll just receive the general wage increase that the city gives. And we have one more. And then we have a corporal who's at step 14 with 15 years of experience. New salary is $43,924. 19 years of tenure at $9,500. So their current salary is $50,364. The new calculated salary would be $53,424. But we're assuming that the city gives a 2% salary increase each year. In this instance, this person would actually be better off with just the city general wage increase. So that's what they'll get over the next 4 years. So what does this mean, as a comparison looking back? This is where we were now for deputy sheriffs. We're second from the bottom. After we implement this pay plan, we'll be third from the top. Virginia Beach and Chesapeake are ahead of us. The fact of the matter is Virginia Beach and Chesapeake are two very different cities than the city of Norfolk is. They are suburbs, essentially. It's much more suburban. they have a lot more money just by the nature of how they're structured. We're never going to be able to compete with Virginia Beach and Chesapeake. But what we did want to do is make sure that we're paying you a fair wage, that we're competitive with cities that are like us. So Richmond is similar to us. Newport News is similar to us. And that we make sure that if you leave the service of the sheriff's office and you're leaving voluntarily, it's not because you're woefully underpaid. We want to make sure that you get paid a fair wage, and we think implementing this pay plan is both affordable, and it also gets you to a fair wage when we compare to the region. Questions, thoughts?
So, a master deputy is going to make more than a corporal now.
That's correct.
So, people that gave up their master deputy to become a corporal are taking a loss.
People who gave up the master deputy to become a corporal have an opportunity to advance further up the rank progression. And that's the trade-off. You know, in talking with Mike and in talking with Sheriff Barron, a master deputy is an extremely important part of what you guys do. And they have, by moving into that role, they're saying, hey, you know what, I want to be a career sheriff's deputy. I like what I'm doing. So it gives them an opportunity to earn significantly more than they are right now. If you go the corporal route and then up through the rank progression, yeah, you may have to take a step back, but you have an opportunity going forward to advance further up the rank progression and make that up.
It went so fast that the one that had the 20 years, once you had 20 years, it sounded like there was no increase. And I'm just trying to think, you went ahead for just 15 minutes, but once I get it, I'll get it.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure out with the new minimum salary for this person is $50,000. In 20 years, they gained $12,000 from added to the $50,000, correct?
That's correct.
Their current salary, because it's greater than that, that's why it didn't change.
Yeah, so this person, because their current salary is greater than what we calculated, they'll get the general wage increase that the city gives on an annual basis.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
The city gives right.
Yes.
How did you, so the difference is the new salary minus your old salary?
Correct. And then that's spread over 4 years. What's that? With the tenure piece, yeah. I mean, to calculate your new salary, you basically take your, the new min plus the amount of your tenure in 4 years times 500. That's your new salary. Subtract your current salary, divide by 4. That's going to be your increase, basically. A couple caveats here. Number one, this is in the city manager's proposed budget. The proposed budget is in the hands of City Council. City Council can choose to adopt this new pay plan or not to adopt this new pay plan. We hope they will adopt this pay plan. But if they do not, then we're back to where we started. The 4-year phase-in assumes that the city gives a general wage increase, a salary increase every year. If the city were in the next 4 years to only give 3 salary increases, then we would only reach step 3 or year 3 in the phase-in process. So it's 4 years if the city gives a salary increase every year for the next 4 years. But if we skip 2 years, if there's no salary increase in 2 years, it might take 6 years to get there.
In the meantime, all the other jurisdictions are steadily climbing, so we're still behind.
At the end of the day, we need to make sure that we get you to a fair wage as quickly as we can. But the reality is, there's fiscal pressure on us, right? And we've got to make sure that we do what we can, but also, manage the city in a financially sustainable way.
No, I just wanted to say 100% yes, those numbers that you gave where we will be in 4 years will still compared to what they are right now. Those numbers can go up, correct? Correct,
yeah. And we have no idea where other localities may be in 4 years from now.
Before you go, I'd like to go back to that screen. I think that was the 4-year the orange screen, the graph. Yeah, that's it. Take a look at that again. Thank you, sir.
And we're going to give Mike a copy of this, and we've also...
Okay.
Already got it. You can tell our internal affairs people want to keep it.
He looked a little intimidated. Trench coat there and tie. Uh-oh. Yeah. I don't want to meet you afterwards.
Make sure your screen changes.
Excellent. Yes, sir.
So what can we do to support this program?
Well, Sheriff Barron's already helped you out. We had a budget public hearing on Wednesday at Granby High School, and he came down, spoke to City Council in favor of the budget. So as long as, I think he is probably your best voice, and he's very supportive of this. Yes, ma'am.
Salary, the end result. Is that taking into 2% raises every year too?
No. So this is, in most cases, this is going to exceed the 2. You don't get both.
You don't do that.
Yes.
That was basically my question.
Yeah.
Okay. You get one or the other.
Correct. Whichever is more beneficial.
You know, you were saying like there's $500 for years of service. Takes 4 years to put in, there's not another 4 years added to the calculation.
No.
You have to go 500.
Yeah. Yeah. If nothing else, this got us a reprieve from O'Toole and Barron beating down our door.
He was going to have some restraining order against me after a while.
Yeah. Still do, different reason.
We live a few blocks away. We live in a neighborhood where there's a little bit of shooting going on.
Yes, ma'am. No. Excuse, guys, can we have one conversation here?
Go ahead, Kelly, ask the question.
No, I forgot what I was going to say. I did. Oh, I'm sorry. When will this go into effect? And people are going to want to be able to calculate their time. So when is this going to fall on their anniversary date? Or, because, some people may wind up being, 19 years and 5 months. Or some people may wind up being 5 years and 3 months. So where would it fit on them to figure out when it's actually going to be starting?
So the salary increase that's in the proposed budget will take place on January 7th or 8th, whenever the first pay period starts in January. So that's the point from which we would calculate. And we haven't, to be fair, we haven't figured out if we round up. If you're at 3.5, is that a round up, round down? We haven't got into that level of detail yet. So to be able to answer your question specifically, I can't at this point.
I kind of have an idea, and I don't know if everybody would know, but what will be voted on in January, that's correct?
This will be voted on May 22nd by the City Council.
But now we won't get it until January. Why do you think they wait so long?
Because the last salary increase everyone got was in January of 2018.
Why was that?
Because that's what we have the money to support.
But the police department, they get theirs in January.
All salary increases happen in January.
Correction, in July, they got it in July.
That's not correct. They got it in January.
These guys were the architects of the police program plan also. So we kind of heavily followed the police plan when they did their compression. So that's kind of why they were ahead of the game, because they had to do the police before us. Any other questions? Okay, let's give Greg a great hand for coming over.
Well, thank you all very much, and thank you for your service.
One final thing before everybody leaves. The sheriff wanted me to make this point very strongly.
I know. How are you?
We have to sell this. They've given the plan. You want this, you have to talk to people who know city council members. It has to be voted on and passed. So please, talk to your city council members, talk to them. We need them to vote to pass this plan on May 22nd. Also talk to some of the citizens who say, hey, my income taxes are going up. Not my property tax is going up by 10 cents.
say I'm getting a
Let us pay for
20%
some of the
increase
stuff that we
by this
need to be
plant,
successful in
but I
law
would have gained
enforcement. So
8%
we need you to be
anyway.
advocates of this
So
plan,
4
and
years
thank you for your
from when it was
time,
going
and if
at,
anyone
4
has any
years from now,
questions about the plan,
you know, I've only
starting on
gained
Monday,
really
I will have
12%,
some
not
idea
20.
about where most people
So
will fall in the next 4 years.
if
I don't
Suffolk
mind
and
people
Newport
coming by and
News
seeing
gain that
you. Have a great
8%,
day.
we still don't quite get to that number 3 spot. So